Right. So everyone is aware we are recording really close to 410. So I guess I will start by saying welcome to this episode of the Octavia Butler um, Book Club. And today is January 12th, 2025. We are discussing Dawn, the first book in the Xenogenesis series. And more recently, it became people started referring to it as Lilith's Brood. And
Mhm.
as we start to talk about this a little bit more, we'll get a better understanding of who Lilith is and why they consider this series her brood. And, there's a good argument for it. But in terms of how the book was published, it was published as book one of the Xenogenesis series. Um, and we'll get, at some point, we'll probably talk about what Xenogenesis is. So before we do anything, I'll introduce myself. I'm Dr. LaWana Richmond. I am the San Diego coordinator for the Black Speculative Arts Movement, co-founder of Afrofuturism Lounge, and founder of the AfrofutureCon. I lecture on Afrofuturism locally at universities and institutions, as well as for organizations and corporations, as well as other institutions outside of San Diego and even outside of the United States. So I can do this one of two ways. We can do popcorn, which is probably easier, especially since there's only five of us, and then we'll see who else joins us. I am gonna pop it over to DeForest because she was the first one here.
Thank you, Luana. I'm DeForest Rashida Hancock. My nickname is Dee Dee, most of the people. And I'm personally kind of, I don't know, I can't say embarrassed, but I'm not a reader. And so this is all new to me. I did go and I have a ton of books, but seriously, I have a ton of books because I heard about it and I'm interested, and then I never read it. So, read them. So I'm just excited to become involved as far as reading and understanding what the book's about. I actually went to the bookstore and I bought Dawn, and I
Okay.
have it. But I'm a native of San Diego, and I actually have a BA in psychology from UCSD back in the Stone Age when there was only three campuses. Revelle, I went to Revelle, Revelle Morrison third. Revelle Muir in third. Um,
Okay.
I'm a member of San Diego Housing Federation, HEAL, Homeless Experience and Advocacy Leadership Network, due to being lived experience of homelessness for 7 years. Also a member of the Voices of Our City Choir.
Nice. So
And
did you get to read the book at all?
no,
Okay.
no.
All right. So now you have to popcorn it to someone else.
All right. My view is just seeing you right now on my phone.
Okay. So I'll do it for you. I'm gonna popcorn it to Jennifer.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Greetings, everyone. Jennifer, born and raised in San Diego. Um, I am so glad, Luana, that you decided to do this series. And I'll share, even though I went to UCLA, I'm a double Bruin. I want to say I too am not a reader really, but during COVID, I discovered this book, and it was actually at my 50th birthday party. We did a book swap, and a sister brought this, who she had started it several times but never finished it, and I couldn't put it down. And after I finished it once, I started it again. And so this is the only book I've read 3 times in my life. This is my fourth time. And I also learned I have ADHD. So it's refreshing reading it this time, so I can kind of put it in perspective. And I've been able to, take little notes at the things I've talked about in just in life with regard to the future and plastic and things that Octavia was able to weave into the story, and just kind of show to me that she was such an environmentalist. I didn't realize that, kind of being a San Diego beach bum from Skyline, if you will. And I love it. So I can't wait to delve in, and I'm excited to be here. Oh, and I just will share, I do my work is I import wine from South Africa made by Black women. And through Sister Circle, we connect Black women around the world, between the US and Africa around healing arts and entrepreneurship. Healing arts because we take care of everybody else first, usually, and entrepreneurship because we have gifts that make the world a better place and we want to support each other in monetizing them. So thank you, Dr. LaWana, for bringing the AfroCon to San Diego, and my daughter has always loved it. And we appreciate you and your presence and keeping Afrofuturism in our conversation, especially in San Diego. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. So now you get to popcorn it.
Okay, come on, Wanda, you're next. Miss Wanda.
Well, thank you, Ms. Jennifer. My name is Wanda Kirchu. I live up in the San Francisco Bay Area. Gracious. I read Octavia Butler's work when I was in middle school and high school. So I'm familiar with her work, the genre, and just how progressive she is. I still feel her work as progressive. Gracious, I am a reader. I read everything, mostly science fiction and fantasy because those are the universes I choose to live in. I am pretend retired. So I retired from education and have chosen to be involved in my different hobbies. Um, I'm on the board of directors for Taiko Community Alliance. I play Japanese drums. I'm on the board for it's called BayCon, which is Bay Area Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Convention. They just turned themselves into SF, San Francisco Society for Speculative Fiction. So I'm on that board of directors, and I do taiko, and I do Legos. I'm a Lego modeler, and there are lots of different things that I'm involved in. I'm involved in my Buddhist group. I've been a Buddhist for over 50 years, and yeah, so that's the Venn diagram of my life. I also have a doctorate in educational leadership and uh, social uh, social dynamics, quote unquote. So yeah, they're just like this whole big sunflower of me. But I'm really, really happy to be here now because Miss Butler's work, in many ways, people call her a prophet, so to speak, about her views on how the world will transition, which I actually hope it doesn't. But in any case, how the world will transition. And yeah, so I'm really happy to engage in this conversation. I actually was in a book club during the pandemic based on the Parable series. So this is like, as LaWana was saying, is sort of paralleling things. I mean, the topics. So I'm sure that we'll have a really great discussion. So it's nice to see all of you. Thank you.
Okay, Felicia. Um, this is your turn to introduce yourself.
Okay. I was not on mute that whole time.
Oh, if you were not on mute, we didn't hear anything.
Oh,
So,
thank God, because I was cutting up vegetables and throwing everything out. Okay, so my name is Felicia House, and I don't know where we met, LaWana, but I think we met through probably Leah, and
okay.
and I saw this on Facebook, and I was like, I'm gonna do that, and I'm so excited and glad that I did. I am, and I've been reading since I can remember. I don't even know when it wasn't reading, but my genre as well is science fiction. I just started a Martin Luther King Jr. book. I didn't realize that that he actually wrote books, and I have one, and I was about to start on it. I just the Wheel of Time was on, so I had to read. I got into 3 of those books. But then I said, let me pick up Octavia and see what's going on. and I couldn't put it down. It was, I think I told you, I read the last Stephen King book I read that I said he was never going to do it to me again was Pet Cemetery. And then I remembered that I read his new one, The Outsider, and he did it to me again. But Octavia kept me up as well, but it wasn't, I could go to sleep and then I'd wake up and do my devotional and then I would read her book. Not so with Stephen King. I'm like, I can't even sleep until I read 3 more chapters.
Oh my
So,
God. Yeah.
so Octavia has grasped my attention in a beautiful way. I want to put it that way. She's grasping me in a beautiful, I understand her language. I understand her vernacular. I understand her speech, and that is a beautiful thing. And I'm pretty sure it's because she's a Black woman. I am a caregiver. I care for my children, my grandchildren. Of course, I'm talking about because I'm 62, so I wouldn't be having no children right now. But I do care for my grandchildren, and I care for my sister, and I care for my family. Before the pandemic, I was like 12 credits from getting my degree in early childhood education. And now I'm like, I don't know, because I'm with my 4-year-olds and they like running me ragged. They try to outrun me, but I'm so grateful that God has given me strength and legs and knees that can catch them. So that's a good thing. But and so I'm a caregiver. I of course I'm an entrepreneur, so I do whatever. My business is Virtually Felicia, so however I can assist any Black woman or any woman really in her business endeavors, I'm there for that. Lately, I've been running a lot of campaigns, but so lately I've been running a whole lot of campaigns, and come on over here. My daughter's trying to reach me, and so it knocked everything. I don't know if y'all can hear me or not. I hope so. Good. But there you are. So I just got done getting one of my dear friends elected to the Otay Water District. So I run campaigns. I do a bunch of stuff. I just do a bunch of stuff. So, but reading has always been a part of my life, and I'm so glad to have been introduced to Miss Butler. I cannot wait to read all of her stuff. And I'm so glad I'm done with Robert Jordan for a little while.
Okay. So just to like kind of kick it off, the thing for me that struck me about the Xenogenesis series is the first book, Dawn. I had never imagined a world like that before. And so, I guess I want to start with like a question. Because of the way it starts, like she's in it. Like we don't know how she got there, we don't know where she is, we don't know anything. What was it like for you when you realized like what was kind of happening, like she was, or where she was waking up to? Like what was like, how do you feel like what was the thing that struck you? And if you want, so just to keep it orderly, if you could like, if you don't want to raise your hand in the raise hand function, you can just like raise your hand. We can kind of go from there. Okay, Miss Felicia.
So I was struck by the way she was able to accept the different people or beings that she was dealing with. I mean, at first she rejected. I mean, a ship that is organic is like was like blew my mind. I was like, wow, what a way to consider traveling. Making your vessel organic, able to live in a hostile environment to us.
Okay.
However, it may not be hostile to any others. And I'm one of those that believe that there's no way that in all of this universe and all of this mass expanse of God's creation that we were the only ones that are made in his image. So that's
Okay.
me. And I can't put my phone on mute, my thing on mute. I wish I could.
That's okay. It's okay.
But
Don't worry.
I am so cooking. So if you hear anything, just put me on mute.
Okay. Jennifer, I see your hand up.
Yes, I was struck by how quickly I felt in that box, right? Like, and how quickly I felt the nakedness of being in that box, and the first time clothes were given, and the magic Velcro clothes. And so I've been struck since I read it about like Octavia's brilliance in, is it like 2 pages? It might be 4 pages that
Mhm.
it took me to figure out, more of where she was. It's just like not even knowing what kind of book it was, right?
Right.
So, but just the brilliance of, we can be in a whole nother time on a different planet, like, and she just did so brilliantly, just so eloquently. So I loved the language of her being in the box. And are we just talking about like the first chapter right now?
Yeah, we're just starting like your first impression, kind of
Yeah.
like you realize that,
Yeah.
she's not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah. And then, slowly, I think, well, it's the future chapters, how the different races and ethnicities are discovered, so it's like the fact that she's a Black woman, but and the way that we find out, I love that process as well.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share? Okay, Dr. Wanda.
Uh, I, I interesting that she comes to into her environment
Mhm.
and not readily accepting where she was, and that whole idea of trying to get out what was going on. I mean, she could have just been in her own mind, and not really
Yeah.
done anything, right? I mean, she could have been in her own mind for all that time, and that maybe at some point she was, but her persistence in trying to communicate with the voice, trying to communicate, but and then coming to the realization that everything was only one way. She could ask, she could answer questions, but not ask. So, and at that point, it's like, is she suffering from psychosis? Is
Mm.
she, is there something really going on that we know nothing about? Is she just in her head? Who knows where she was? And then everything was, I consider, to be a gradual reveal.
Yeah.
You
Um,
weren't just, you just weren't inundated. Well, here we are, we're out in space, blah, 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 blah. It was a gradual thing to the point where she realized that she really wasn't crazy.
yeah. I
And yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I really like how the way the book is written. It was paced in a way, for me at least, I felt like I could feel her impatience in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like what's next, like what else is there, and like what are they not telling her, and like what do they want. Um, so for me, um, yeah, because I watch a lot of Twilight Zone and Outer Limits,
Mm-hmm.
um, I was trying to figure out, was she like in an insane asylum? Was she dreaming? Was she being held, hostage someplace? Because we don't even know who she is. We don't know if like she's some wealthy person who's been kidnapped, or, what any of the timing was. Um, so one of the things for me that's really interesting is that this was like post apocalypse, right? And it was written based on the premise that, we eventually destroy our planet and everything on it and make it inhabitable. Is it inhabitable or inhabitable? Inhabitable.
Inhabitable. Inhabitable.
Inhospitable. If you're
Hospitable?
inhabitable, you can inhabit it. You can be here.
Okay, so
Yeah, yeah.
inhospitable.
So
Yeah.
Inhospitable.
Uninhabitable.
or
Uninhabitable.
uninhabitable.
Good one.
Yeah.
Good one. Good one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and there was, so while she's, feeling this way, and it feels like she's completely resisting, everything that they're presenting and offering her. But as I was reading it, I was like, oh, that's really cool. Oh, that's really cool too. Oh, wow, I really like that. I wish we had that here. And you know, as she starts to like reveal the world that they're on, as we understand that it's a spaceship. What are some of the things that were different in that world? I know I heard Jennifer talk about some of them, but like, what was something that, like, if we could bring anything from the Oankali ship to Earth and actually do it, just, if all things were possible, what would be like the one thing that you would want to bring here? Dr. Wanda?
I would say just the whole idea of the in there's no need for people to go hungry. There, all everything and anything that makes it an uneven playing field here,
Uh-huh.
I would like brought here, because there's so many things that we're always fighting for resources, no matter what they are, whether it be food, shelter. If we go with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, basic needs on this planet are not taken care of by, or not available to everybody.
Okay.
Period.
So it sounds like you really like their social structure.
Not necessarily the social structure. The ship
Okay.
provided everything.
Okay.
And it would be great to have that, where you provide stuff, so provide, quote unquote, provide everything, whatever that looks like, to erase the need to compete for things.
Okay.
Now what they're competing for are genetics. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I'd rather be competing for genetics than competing for a loaf of bread. I mean, because it raises the playing field. People, that becomes a thing. I would rather have that be a thing,
Okay.
where people exist or are able to advance themselves to their highest potential and have that be marketable, rather than people doing stupid stuff like voting for, pardon me, the wrong side, because they want the price of eggs to be lowered, which makes no
Okay.
sense whatsoever, because nobody's
Yeah.
in control of that, right? But
Right.
but in any case, I would rather have people have the ability to develop themselves to their highest potentials,
Okay.
and not be
Um,
penalized if they have, quote unquote, deficits, but be encouraged to develop to their strengths.
I like it. All right, Jennifer.
I liked the food on the ship, right? Although it was like dog food or whatever, it wasn't tasteful, but it provided the nutrition that they needed, right? And so I know when they had the chance, like she loved that banana when she got it, right?
Yeah.
And it made her appreciate the fruits and vegetables more, right? And so I like that nutritional food without the need for it to be pretty, because I'll just share, with my multiple sclerosis, I've got to watch what I eat, and so my food determines how well I'm walking. And so when I buy zebra corn, which is delicious, or eat ice cream, which I love and keep, I pay for it. I suffer. So I love just eat. Well, we had that option, right? It's vegan, right? And it's that food that I don't want to eat. But I loved that, and then I also loved the ability of is it the onkali or whichever ones it is, the ulai, to be able to tell when people are telling the truth, even if they're lying to themselves. Right? I loved that. I love that. If we had truth in our society, I think so much would be better, and we'd be forced to deal with realities instead of so much masking and gaslighting and just so much. So I love that part as well.
Okay. So we had a couple of people join us. And so we've done introductions. So I'd like it if you could each introduce yourself, and I'll just go in the order that you joined the room. And I think, is it Altagracia? Altagracia?
Yeah, it's Altagracia.
Thank you.
Hi, how should I introduce myself? Should I just say my name?
Your name, it's a short introduction, quick, like 1 or 2 minutes, whatever you want to share in that time. Some people have shared like their businesses or their background, just whatever you want to share.
Beautiful. My name is Altagracia. I am originally from New York City and I'm in New Jersey right now. I am a facilitator. My work involves bringing communities together virtually and in person. And I'm excited to talk about this text. Like Octavia Butler is a real one, okay? And I'm a super fan. And so I'm just excited to be in a space with other people who I think really love Octavia Butler as well.
Okay, I appreciate that. I appreciate you being here. Just out of curiosity, how did you hear about the group?
The Facebook group. How did I hear about the Facebook group?
Uh-huh.
Honestly, I was looking for others who are just as wild about Octavia Butler as myself. So I kind of just started doing a little clickety clacking in there and started searching as much as possible to see what was out there. So it really was just by chance. I guess the universe brought me to it as I was doing some research.
All right, well, thank you so much. And Dr. Takima?
Greetings, everyone. My name is Takima Mayasa. I am a professor at San Diego Mesa College, and I am so grateful to be here. I really apologize for being late. I'm on duty. I'm on, watching grandchildren, and so I got kind of tied up with that. And I was like, "Oh, I'm missing my meeting. Y'all got to go. I got to log in." And so, Altagracia, I'm there with you on that. I was first introduced to Octavia Butler in the 90s and with the African American Women's Conference, and had the opportunity to speak with her because I was working with the conference at that time. And she was one of the names that we had put together to invite. And yeah, and I've been sold ever since. So I'm here to learn. I haven't finished reading all of Dawn, so I'm here, to get the insights and everything like that. And so I'm just happy to be here. And to answer the question, how did I get here? I've known LaWanda for a really long time, and so we were having another conversation, and she just happened to mention, and I was like, oh, can I join? Can I come into this? So I'm really happy to be here and hope to have the opportunity to be with you all moving forward.
Awesome sauce. I'm really glad you could make it, especially on such short notice. So this is really casual, so never feel bad about joining late. I try to make the discussion about an hour and a half. And it's really just a way to like be in community, because the themes I think that get touched on in every book are like so like kind of next level. And what my struggle with this, because I've read all of them and they like bleed into each other, is to make sure that like I stick to the first book and don't like, because some of you haven't read all of them yet. But one of the things I wanted to share is like in an interview with Joshua Sanders, Butler said that the space race influenced the writing of Dawn. So this was like back in I think this is another book that came out in the 90s. And she said, I think of the space race as a way of having a nuclear war without having one. And then she said the idea of nuclear war being winnable by either side caused her to write the trilogy. She said there must be something basic, something really genetically wrong if we're falling for this stuff. So, the reality is, most of us know that if anyone ever decides, okay, it's time to go nuclear, that's it for all of us, everybody on the planet. It's not a winnable war. People who can push a button and who are monitoring to see if anyone else pushed a button, that as soon as someone pushes a button, it's game over.
Mhm.
And so this book is about like, what happens after that, or what could happen after that. And in many ways, I see this book as very optimistic because it's saying someone is going to save us, which may or may not be the case.
Mhm.
Some of the themes that I saw that I thought might be interesting is, power dynamics, survival, fear, belonging. And I just wanted to know, like, for all of you, what are some other like themes that come up in this book? I heard someone talk about sustainability. Would anybody like to share like a theme, even if it's one that I said that like really resonated with you from this story? Dr. Wanda.
Adaptability. How well can in the story, how well was she able to adapt to what was going on? And then again, how difficult was it for others to adapt and go back to the old ways? And for others who were able to adapt, but and lived their lives with uh, the Oncology and within that society, but she never got to meet them because they had died while they were there. Just the what is it actually in the big picture? What does it mean to adapt to where you are? That's number one. And then number two, it was interesting that those individuals that could not adapt, they weren't killed. They were just put to sleep until their brain could sort things out, maybe. But they were never killed. The only people that killed were the ones that were awakened and offered this new reality.
Mm.
Does anyone else have something they'd like to share in terms? Okay, Altagracia. Did I say it right?
Yes, you did. You did. But I told Dr. Takima, you put your hand up first. So I'm trying to
Oh,
be
okay, I'm sorry.
here.
Oh, no worries. As you were speaking, Dr. Wanda, it made me think of vulnerability. This back and forth. At the very beginning, the vulnerability, as the woman was talking, as Lilith was talking about, am I really experiencing this? Am I going mad? And even in her first encounters, before she actually gets out of the room, is as you mentioned about adjusting, and there's hesitation on some levels to receive and move forward. And that vulnerability, I've seen a pattern, or at least it feels like that in the very beginning. And the resistance. And one thing that stood out for me was when she was so insistent about, going back to Earth, and he's the person, that the alien that she's dealing with, is saying, well, like, just chill out, right? And you wouldn't survive where at the stage you're at now. And just that resistance, right? It's almost, they talk about the hierarchy, and that natural tendency for human beings to go back to that whole hierarchy thing, right? Well, I just want what I want, and if I can, and not hearing or taking a long time to be willing, right, to let somebody else take the lead. And the last part of vulnerability that stood as you were talking was that they really couldn't, we think that we're all of that in a bag of chips. All the time, human beings talk about, being champions of the world, and especially Americans. And clearly that wouldn't have happened, we were self-destructive, and somebody else had to rescue us from ourselves, so, and that was, just seeing that very clearly, despite the resistance and vulnerabilities and desires to do something else. And like when he said, well, she said, well, I don't think I'm the good teacher. And he says, yeah, but the people that you think are going to be good teachers, they don't understand that the world has changed. And the knowledge they have, some of that is obsolete. So you're really starting all over, you know, and the idea of, well, you know, you didn't save our stuff and we got to like really do it from scratch. And that kind of arrogance, actually, right? The arrogance of, well, how dare you like take that away from us so that we have to start from scratch instead of welcoming the opportunity to get it right, to do it over to get it right, or do better by it.
Yeah, so I really appreciate what you had to say because as we go into the later books, um, there's going to be more. There's more about why they didn't just say, here's some technology, go live your life. Um, but Jennifer, I want to hear what you have to say.
Altagracia had her, she had
Yes,
deferred.
Altagracia, please.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
No, it's okay. I wanted to
All right.
thank you, LaWana, too, with the way you bridged us into this. I think you did that so beautifully. And I don't even know if these count as themes, y'all. So ride with me for a second, because maybe they're themes, maybe just sticking out to me. Maybe I just want to save them and see where they land with us. But I was talking to my partner today because I have finished the book in like these last 4 days, and I was trying to describe the like interspecies, you know, um, intercourse. I guess it's happening, right? And I was having a hard time describing it. And maybe it's because like I'm still trying to wrap my brain around what was really happening there. And still trying to, visualize that interspecies kind of intercourse, right? That was happening. And I remember trying to explain to him, I was like, oh, they were doing intercourse, but not in the way that like humans are doing like intercourse. They weren't just like going at it, right? And
It was
I think that
intercourse.
yeah, right. Like intercourse. Is it intercourse? What is it? Right.
Yeah.
But I think the words I had used is I was like, the way it was described made me think of, and if this is like a PG room, like let me know, please. But it felt like a clitoral stimulation versus just like penetration is what I was trying to describe it as. As like these orgasmic, it felt like these orgasmic things, these orgasmic experiences that were happening with between species. And so for me, I felt like there was like this theme of like eros that is like in there somehow. And as I'm looking back at the different like covers to the text, I'm noticing that I love to look at Octavia Butler covers and the different covers that people put up for books. I think it's so and there's so many for Dawn that look like 80s R&B albums. Like, what is with that? Right? So I'm like, I see them trying to tap into that Eros energy too when they're making those I said R&B covers, but when they're making those covers that look romantic almost,
Mhm. Yeah, the thing that's interesting, when you talk about like the intimacy, um, is that it feels like it's more cerebral and spiritual and energetic than it is physical. It's almost reminds me of like in some sci-fi, they're saying we get in some, not in this, but in some sci-fi movies, people are at a point where they don't actually engage in physical sexual intercourse at all. They put on suits, sensory suits, and they, I imagine, once they take the human failure out of it, it starts to just be like great sex no matter what. I don't know, because it's more about what's in your mind. So I'm gonna go to Jennifer and then Felicia. Jennifer.
Okay, greetings. I love the conversation on eros and the relations. Um, my comment is about, maybe it's personal because I'm still single, a single mom, but the partnership, right? And how people chose their partners, right, once they became awakened, and how Lilith and Joseph found each other, right? And so how I remember, trying to remember like what people look like. And so I just remember Gabriel, like, okay, he's my Boris Kojo, right? Or no, he was dark like Lilith, right? So he was like, I'm like, no, he's not like Boris, he's like Idris, right? And
Okay.
then there's one scene in there where she's like, it's a tense time, and he smiled at her and she saw his perfect teeth, and she said he was the most beautiful man she had ever seen before she woke him up. And how the Uloi, or the whichever ones, told her that they thought that the common Uloi group thought that Lilith would have chose someone who looked like her, right? The fine brother, I'm assuming, right? And the fact that she chose a little Chinese man, because the others thought that Lilith would like the brother because she was like him, but Nikanj knew that she would like Joseph because he was like her. And I was just like, whoa, like,
Yeah.
if only we chose or learned to choose based on that, as opposed to like someone like myself who for the first 52 years of my life, kept getting sidetracked by the beauty, right? And the teeth or just the presentation. And so I loved the depth of their personalities and their values that bonded Lilith and Joseph specifically.
Okay, I like that. I think we get more and more into like the Uloy's sensitivity and ability to like, like you ever heard somebody say, I know you better than you know yourself. I feel like the Uloi literally do get to know us on a cellular, genetic, spiritual, behavioral level and observe it in a way that things that we don't even notice about ourselves.
Yeah, and I'll just say that we don't notice, or that we pretend not to acknowledge, or that we're even in denial about. Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that. Is it Nalini?
Felicia had her hand up.
Okay, I just want to welcome the new person to the room, and give her a chance to introduce herself, and also to say, like, I said earlier, this is a very informal group, so no apologies necessary for being late. I believe in communal potential time, so people call it CPT, some people call it color people's time, but you get there when you finish doing whatever you have to do before you get there. So there may be something with your volume. I can hear you, but it's like very faint.
This should work.
Yeah,
No,
it does.
I'm only sorry because I'm a terrific Octavia Butler fan, and I just miss having heard everything so far. And I've read all her books, and sometimes I get them confused,
Yeah.
But as you're talking about the sexual relationship and the sensual, can I make a point? Or no, somebody else was
Someone else is going
ahead
to
of
speak.
me.
Just if you could introduce yourself briefly, and
Sure.
then
I live in La Cañada. I actually fell in love with Octavia because of learning the history of Altadena, which is a community I've always loved. So I'm a neighbor in a sense, and like I said, I discovered her during the pandemic and read all her books, and they were profound.
I'm praying that her bookstore and her library won't be destroyed in the midst of all the chaos. Um, Welcome to the group, Wanda. No, wait, it was Felicia and then Wanda, right?
Yeah, I was going to say it's Felicia first.
Okay, sorry. You guys have to like when I do this, you have to correct me because I'm doing my best, but I am always going to be human. I mean, unless the Owen Collie come and change that. But Felicia.
So we did this comment, I'm so glad I remembered it, was in reference to what I felt when I was reading, the overall feeling. So if I connected with the humanity, so I connected greatly with Lilith. And to me, the aliens were, I don't know, they were the hierarchy. So they always said we don't have a hierarchy, but you felt like they were the hierarchy because they were so smart, so brilliant, had an answer for everything, and yet they could be at our level. So to me, it reminds me of my walk, with I'm a Christian, so I'm gonna be saying Yahweh a lot. So my walk with Yahweh, I mean, sometimes I think, wow, I'm on the same level, and then something happens, and I'm like, how did I get through that? And then I remember that I'm walking with the King. So to me, that had some level of thematic adventure as I was reading. And as far as the intimacy that was happening, if you notice, I was looking at it to pronounce his name. I forget names so fast. But Nikanj, is that how we're going to say it? Nikanj?
I don't know that there's a right way to say it because I never, you could say Nikanj, Nikanj. It's.
Great. Nikanj, he was very,
It,
during the intimate times, there could be no touching.
right.
And our humanity requires, unless you're doing tantric lovemaking, which is a beautiful thing, all in the head, all energetic, no touching, just a whole lot of looking and whatever. If that's your thing, then you were able to understand or relate. But we as humans are touchy feely touchy. And Nikanj was like, oh no, not without me, which to me said, wait a minute, Nikanj wants touchy feely too. So is Octavia trying to tell us that even in the far reaches of the universe, that we are all alike? That was my thing about the touchy feely, tantric, and the outer space, the deeper level of intimacy, which of course can be achieved with any human being who feels like they are getting the type of love from another human being that they need. I don't know about y'all, but there have been times when I thought I was madly in love and could really connect on every kind of level. And with just like with us as a people, because we have to have each other that can come and go because there's always someone else. So some people mate for life, or so they think they make for life. but and I'm out. Go for it. Hey, I've been single my whole life, and I thought I wanted to be married, and I found out at 62 that I dodged a bullet. So, I wonder if Octavia is reminding us that we do not walk alone. That even in this great expanse of universe, there is a connection that is needed, and that's just my feeling.
Okay, I like that. And then I wonder, like, if you all picked up on, or did they get there in this book? Because I get lost on what happens when people start trying to touch each other without the Uloi involved.
Yes, they don't like it.
Yeah. So I think that there may have been some effort to get them to avoid it so they could avoid finding out how much they hated it. But Dr. Wanda?
Yes, and that's a very good point to bring up, is that the idea of the whole, sex, what does that look like? And actually, when Lilith and her partner were together, Nikanj was right in the middle of them, and he always just touched. It was touch. It was all touch, and it was total cerebral of that intimacy. And her partner didn't like it. He hated it, but he couldn't help it. But so that was where it became the mental threesome, so to speak. But what's very interesting though is that Nikanj saved her partner's sperm so she could become pregnant. How did that happen? It was never discussed. But so she became pregnant with her partner's sperm, which was saved. And that ties back into the whole gene swapping thing. So everybody's genes were mixed in together in a soup. and she had kids, but there was really no that I could discern where through sexual intercourse she became impregnated.
Correct. Yeah,
And,
they
yeah,
did it on screen.
and also understanding that there were copies of her. They had copies of her genetic makeup, so they could just grow another her if they needed to have another her. She'd be probably a different person, at least that's what was implied, but they didn't need her because they already had a copy of her.
Yeah, they're gonna go into it in more in depth in like the as the series continues in terms of um, clarifying the Uloi capabilities and even its role. I did like so one of the things it did talk about how it was more difficult for men to accept, and I think that that may have been her touching on gender identity and orientation things, because it was probably more the way that she presented it, it was more challenging for men to like surrender their role in intercourse. um Nalini, am I saying your name correctly?
It's Nalini, like
Nalini,
colony
like
with an
colony.
N.
Okay.
Yeah, as soon as I jumped on and I heard what you guys were talking about, the thought occurred to me with the aliens intervening and picking partners, it makes a case for arranged marriages. Because the people in both families, they know enough about the character and the nature of these people that maybe that they would make a good match. So that was kind of interesting. Hadn't thought about that before. And the physical connection when Lilith fell in love with Joseph and they were both so in love, and then she plugs in and he didn't consent, he didn't want to do it. And then they have this euphoric, unbelievable, experience, but then ever after never wanted to touch either
Yeah.
one. And that image is one of the first images that just you know it stayed with me forever. Like, I don't know what it means, but it just was it was very powerful. I never imagined something like that where you have the ultimate connection, but the cost of it is that you never want to touch again. Really heavy.
Yeah, I mean that's it's something to think about. Because everything is a trade, right? And they talk about trading a lot throughout the story. And so on one hand, you trade, rolling the dice in terms of what each individual sexual encounter is going to be like, but being in control of, I guess, consent in your mind, right? And you trade that for knowing that when you do have this encounter, even though it's different from what you used to do, you experience like these like great sensations consistently. um but it's a trade, right? It's a sacrifice. Felicia.
Did you guys did you guys find it a little disconcerting that Kurt lost his mind when he had a sensation that he could not control, that was out of his control? He just lost it. He spent his time trying to maintain some semblance of control, which is if you I know I don't know if you know my is a power does not let go of power. You absolutely have to rip it away from the powerful in order for it to be relinquished. And well, we knew Kurt was a military man. We knew that he was a man of order. we don't we don't know what his race was. At least I didn't catch it. Maybe I was reading too fast to catch it. But he comes off as a Caucasian for sure. And he was just so, once he had his sexual experience, he wanted to fight and did fight. What do you guys think about? Did anybody find that strange, or is it just me? Oh, you think he was black? Okay, that could have been too, because it's so many black men who don't. But anyway, I don't want to go into that because that's generalizations,
It
and
just
it's
really,
just not true all the time. So I just wonder, what do you guys think about not? I mean, having the best experience ever, and being unable to accept that for what it is, but wanting to control it. What do you think?
I think I think there was some shame in there for him. But that's just my opinion because people, shame is a really challenging thing for people to navigate. Nalini, you were going to say something. I
oh,
heard you.
just there's a summary of Kurt in that he's a former cop who's protective but stubborn and closed-minded. So I mean that could be any race, but I mean the point is he's closed-minded, and we just have
Yeah.
that. We just have that problem, especially with the men in our lives. Sometimes they learn it one way and they don't change.
Yeah. Um, I think it was, I think it was an archetypal male. Some people would call it, toxic masculinity. But
Mm.
honestly, I think if it was more toxic to him than it was to anybody else.
Mm.
I think, thank you for bringing that up, Felicia. I'm always like in awe of Octavia Butler's just imagination. And I do recognize that our imagination is like a seed is planted from our reality and then something else blossoms, right? And clearly the things that have blossomed are for her are just out of this world. So I'm always just like, wow, what was she thinking when she doing this? And I think you use the word archetype, which I appreciate because in you describing her as someone who's in the queer community reminds me of folks who are like not ready to accept their queerness. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
Like they're like, no, not queer, and they want to shut that door as hard as possible. So that's kind of what it made me think of. I also think, it's interesting because it's not even just in I'm not even just reminded of like queerness too. I'm also reminded of just like pleasure. Like I think we live in a world that people are afraid of pleasure. I mean,
Mhm.
you know,
That's what I'm talking
yeah,
about.
just we live in a world like that. And listen, we also there's a lot. I mean, there's some folks who would say that inability to lean into pleasure and to allow ourselves to engage in pleasure also leads to a lot of like toughness, anger. That's where our toxicness comes up, etc. So that kind of archetype just made a lot of sense for me. It really did. But something else that also stuck out to me too is sticking out to me as I'm continuing to read Octavia Butler books, is why does the love gotta die? Why, Octavia? Why do you do this? Like, I feel like she's done this a couple times now where I'm like, wow, yes. Our main character has found someone and it feels good. And then they just ripped away, which that is also something that has made me really wonder about Octavia and has made me really wonder about just what love was like in her life. And I made a mental note to ask another author who I know has been in her archives and has read through her journals. So I'm really curious, like if she herself has ever experienced love and you know, if yes, if no, whatever, just how that has inspired, because inspired the romance in her text, because there's so many characters I feel like that have just been ripped away from our main characters. They find someone and then they lose them. So
So there's a lot that's been written about her, and then there are people. She's a West Coast person, so
mhm.
like she taught at UCLA for a period, and she lived in Pasadena, and she used to ride the public public
Yep.
transportation, and
Mhm.
so I have friends that actually used to ride the bus with her. The things that are known, one is that like she died alone.
Mhm.
In fact, there are some people who believe that if she had not been alone, she may have survived because there would have been someone there to care for her and make sure that she got care. Because I think she was injured. And yeah, it's, in some ways I see parallels to like Zora Neale Hurston, who was this brilliant writer who died of malnutrition.
Mm.
Um, and the other thing is, she's my understanding she's a member of the queer community in a time when it was absolutely not socially acceptable. And so I'm sure that impacted her access to romance. And then she was very shy,
Mm-hmm.
kind of self-conscious because she was a taller woman and just less I don't want to say feminine presenting because how do you define feminine, but so there were some factors in terms of like maybe how she perceived herself or how willing she was to actually let people in, and some of that probably comes through. And then for a lot of authors, love is considered tragic. I mean, for a lot of humans, love is considered tragic. Like, a lot of times it's that first blush, when you first like become infatuated with the person and it's amazing. And then, reality sets in and it's, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm actually 6'2", and she was about my height. Then I grew up in Hollywood, and as I say, I live in La Cañada now, but I'm so familiar with Pasadena and Altadena, and I believe from everything I've read, including going through some of her archives and reading that one book that has copies of all her little bus tickets and grocery receipts and everything, I don't think she ever did have a relationship, a big, boyfriend or girlfriend, either way, that sticks out in the biographies. And I think she was pretty alone. She worked at really odd hours, scrambling. Every 22 cents were important to her because she spent all her time in her books. And so I've always come away thinking that she never did have a love like you would want in your life, a partner. And I'm sure that would have been something that she might have missed, but maybe by being, so focused and prolific in her imagination and her interpretation of humanity and where we're headed and what our problems are, she was consumed with an intellectual, endeavor. And so I don't think she was lucky in love. That would be my
Doesn't seem like
conclusion.
it. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it.
If I could jump in, I think in what you all have just talked about is Octavia Butler showing us about um, our humanity in the sense that one, that love is a lot bigger than what we could imagine. I think about like some of my parents' generation, where one spouse has died and the other spouse has been asked, you ever thought marry again? They're like, no, because I see and I feel, and they're still whole and they're still very much in love with their spouse. That love is beyond physical. And you mentioned earlier, Wanda, about spiritual, and I think a lot of her stuff is a different kind of spiritual than what people normally would consider spiritual. And so this kind of love that's being experienced in this book is so euphoric that it's like there's no need to have physical touch, which could take away from that whole spiritual, fullness that is beyond a physicality that in some instances ways might limit, right, the love that is being experienced, in that regard. And Alter Gracia, did I say that right? To your point about the tragic, I think Octavia Butler is trying to remind us that there's something that we do to fuck it up, mess it up, or not follow through so that we can continue to have this. And to remind us of, okay, well, what are we doing that's impeding or impairing us from this continuation? It's something that we do or don't do or something. And that, that pattern in some of the books is like, I hear what you're saying, is that, okay, wake up. Like, let's wake up. Let's figure this out. And let's not keep doing the same old stuff so that we can continue to have the benefits. And I think part of that, though, is there's one thing to being honest about our humanity, and sometimes we got to let's maybe think of ourselves more as spiritual beings and not just human beings. And if we can like maybe spend more time in that realm, maybe we can transcend some of these things that we repeatedly do to ourselves, because we're doing it and then we need to be rescued by someone who sees greater than our humanity. If we could just go there and transcend that. So
Dr. Wanda?
you're muted.
Thank you. So in any case, you're right, because when the group of humans that she awakens, they awaken and they're going through their thing, and the next thing you know, they fall into the same pattern,
Mm-hmm.
the exact same patterns, where you have your savagery, you have the people that just go along because they're fear-based, and in the meantime, Lilith has done nothing except be herself, tell the truth, let people know what's really going on. They don't believe her, and that whole idea of it's savagery and people working against themselves. I was reading it, and at the same time like watching the news and reminding myself of what happened back in November, and like, here we go again.
Mm-hmm.
And now currently we have group of people saying, come save us from we made a bad choice, come save us from our choice. And at this moment, there's nothing there. There's nobody to save us, to save us, because we are not separated from them. It's us too, right? So here we have this book, and I'm like, it just keeps repeating itself. And then I don't know what it is within the human psyche that has people go towards the self-destructive end. That's what I see. They go towards the self-destructive end and then wait for somebody to come, or pray for somebody to come to save them from their bad choices. And that's what was outlined in the book at some part of the book. The fear of the unknown. Yes, there's, it's right there, and in the end, what is it? That one group gets shipped to Earth, where they may or may not survive, and then
So
go on. Yeah.
So sorry I had to step away. I thought I had an hour and a half bladder, but I guess I didn't. you know, Felicia, I see your hand. I just want to say really quickly that just some observations about human nature is when we're happy and we experience joy, so often instead of enjoying that experience, we are in our head thinking about, what's wrong, what's going to go wrong, how long is it going to last, but what is it that I'm missing that's allowing me to just be happy? And we will destroy just so that we can be comfortable instead of just appreciating whatever it is we're experiencing.
So I just wanted to throw out there, I don't remember what I was reading because I'm reading all the time, but there was a little, blurb, an observation, so to speak, that people will stay in the most horrendous of situations. And it will be, I think I read Nakan said it, and they will choose to stay in that situation because they have become so used to it. It's easier to deal with what they know, even if they know that it is going to harm them. It is not until either their lives or the life of their children or the life becomes so compromised, or could be compromised, or they're in the compromising situation. Notice, I'm saying the life of their children, because there's so many. If you observe, there are so many who lose their life. It becomes too late when they decide I've had enough. It becomes too late to because the person that is doing whatever they're doing to them has also become used to the situation. What I'm trying to say is, when I looked at the reaction of all of the characters in the book and how quickly they reverted right back to what destroyed them, it was mind-boggling. I kept thinking about that. I kept thinking about the human resistance to complete and total change. Now, I'm 62 now. Please, when I was 22, you couldn't tell me nothing. I knew it all. And please don't try to tell me nothing, because I know what I'm doing. But you live and you learn. If you make it to 32, you start learning some things. And then when you make it to 42, you start thinking, well, maybe I didn't have it right at 22. We're talking 10-year intervals here. At 52, you're pretty solid. You're pretty, you either gonna stay where you are, or you're gonna be looking for change. You're gonna be looking for evolution. You're gonna be looking for that next level. And then when you get to 62, you just start trying to get there. You can see it. It's a horizon. You can see the outer rims of that which is greater, and you start reaching for it. You start searching. Nothing stops you from trying to get there. And everything, just as you was 22, at 62, there will be obstacles. But you learn how to overcome. And that's what that book kept reminding me of. This woman kept overcoming. She kept overcoming. She went back, even though those people wanted to kill her, and she knew they wanted to kill her. She went back. She stood the test. She fought the battle. She did her very best in her devotion to complete and total love, which has no boundaries. That you don't learn that either. It takes you a while to understand that love really has no boundaries. But this woman, Lilith, is on the precipice of understanding that there are no boundaries to real love. And you hear but you need to set your boundaries, and yes, you do. Sometimes, and I mean most times, you need to set your boundaries, but love really does overcome a whole plethora of things. So that's just something that, I thought about as y'all were talking.
I should unmute. No, I think that was powerful. The power of love is, definitely a strong theme. I want to go to Jennifer's question about Lilith laying down on the battlefield, and I would like you to kind of unpack that a little bit.
Bless you. It's actually a great transition, Felicia, from the conversation about boundaries, right? And love, right? So when she was getting ready to take off her jacket for Nikanj, I was like, I know she is not going to get naked and lay down with this alien in the middle of the battle. And she did. And she didn't think twice. She froze her limbs. Like, she didn't care how much it hurt. She repositioned. She took the pain. And
yeah,
and to know that she was gonna be just seen as the ultimate betrayer, right? Mm-hmm. by the people that she awoke, and And to take all that, and I want to say it made me rethink it, Felicia, as you're talking about boundaries, right? In terms of like why would she choose all these people who she knew knocked her out and tried to kill her, when Nikanj only looked out for her, only had her survival at heart, like
Right.
only treated her well, only made her feel pleasure, only took away her pain, And so that sacrifice also, to let go of all those social relationships, like even though she would have liked to say bye, when they took off, to that sacrifice. Yeah. And I just wanted to hear other people's reaction. I was floored by that move, and that sacrifice that she made. Like, yeah, that just was so, it was more than herself. It was like just what the power of what she felt in taking those actions. How sometimes she would be like, well, I went to reach for the tentacle, but I resisted a little bit and then I went back. She didn't resist at all. And so, yeah, just wanted to put that on the table before we got off.
Okay, so did anyone want to speak to that, or I'm going to go to Altagracia's comment?
I'm gonna connect it.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my best to connect it, because like y'all got me fired up. My brain like I have like so many things to like, but I'm gonna try my best to connect to y'all. Okay. I was thinking about how much of what so much of our conversation has been naming Octavia Butler's ability to give social commentary in these very creative ways, right? Like we know that's something that she's so good at, and I've always said that she's so good at pattern recognition. Like there's a lot of the young folks, I would include myself in that, are like, wow, Octavia Butler. I know there's a lot of folks who have been in on the Octavia Butler thing for a very long time and have recognized and seen her making these predictions for a while. So that she's so good at pattern recognition. I remember really believing and wondering in my heart if Octavia Butler was ever into divination. And I had it confirmed for me that she read the I Ching. And I was like, oh my gosh, of course, that makes so much sense. She read the Book of Changes. And so like that pattern recognition isn't just that she was sitting on the bus every day in her mind, ability, and looking and observing and taking in the world. And she didn't have a partner to waste her time. But it also was that she was reading the Book of Changes. So I'm sitting with that. I'm sitting with also now how I'm in this space where a lot of folks are naming those patterns again. And I'm feeling, as an Octavia Butler fan, I'm feeling this inner, like, and I am curious if others feel this, but the subtle, like frustration, I think, with folks where everyone will just be like, see, look, she predicted this thing. And I keep on being like, okay, so what the fuck are you going to do with it now? Like, okay, she predicted it. Now what? Right?
Mhm.
Like she's been saying this and we should have been doing something. And so like, what are we going to do now? Right? Okay. So then I'm thinking about this concept of like love and like how these are these elements of like, what is true love? Love is patience, is selfless, is sacrifice. And those things are kind of coming up. Right. And so to go to Jennifer's point, I feel like there is this element of like wanting to take this book in and saying like, wow, look, this imagery and these beautiful themes and et cetera, but also saying like, what am I going to change in my life? Because I've seen this woman lay in my brain, this woman just laid in a battlefield with an alien. And like, what am I going to do my world with? Right. And it's kind of offering this question of like, this element of me asking self and putting up this mirror of like, am I laying with enough aliens in this world? You know what I'm saying? Like, am I doing enough of laying with aliens in the battlefield? Am I doing it enough? And if not, where can I do more of it? And where should I be doing it? And so that's my connection.
No, I think that's beautiful because that like comes up for me because I am a staunch Afrofuturist, and we live in a diverse and dynamic world. And quite often so for me personally, I see Afrofuturism as inclusive futurism because, the Afrofuturists that I meet with from all over the world, none of us want to erase other people or replace other people. We want to co-create a world where everybody can thrive. And so when you look at it from that angle, it's very different from, othering anyone. And otherwise, what we're doing is we're just repeating the cycle and just changing hats. So yeah, the laying with enough aliens is a great way of looking at it. I like that she uses these like alien archetypes to get us to look at our very human behaviors. So Nalini, I see you
Yeah,
have.
I just wanted to say that I think she was really a pessimistic futurist. Was my takeaway, that she really could see those patterns, and they do keep repeating every 500 years, 1,000 years. We keep doing the same bullshit of ruining our local environment and falling into distrust and war, and it's sad. But and even in this book, Lilith wakes up 250 years later. So when we talk about, are we surprised that everybody fell back into that pattern? No, because I think her message is that she can't give us the what to do now, because we haven't figured that out. But she challenges us to imagine it, I think.
So I'm going to challenge your position of pessimism,
Sure.
because she portrays people making all different kinds of choices while acknowledging that some of those choices aren't necessarily in our best interests. And some of those choices are to like remain in those patterns, but there are also people who are willing to step out in in another direction and try something new. And to speak, and you can see it illustrated, one, in the people that chose to stay behind, as well as the people who went back to Earth, who stayed loyal to her and stayed loyal to the path.
Yeah,
So
I mean, oops.
yeah,
Just
because we live in a society where a lot of times we don't do the thing that is for the common good, because we're waiting for everybody to want to do the right thing. And I think she realistically points out that we're not, if we wait around for everybody to agree, it's never going to happen.
right.
But
Well, I
Dr.
wanted to finish what I forgot to say. The last sentence was, what I do get from her is, be authentic and be yourself, even though you might be different from the rest. And what you're talking about to me is leadership. Very few people want to stand up and be leaders.
Yeah, Altagracia, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you continue. Your voice is really welcome and appreciated. And, we need some East Coast representation in this group, because most of us are over here in Cali. Like, no, all of us except you. So, yeah, come, show up, bring yourself, and, invite some friends. Yeah, Dr. Wanda.
Yes, see you later, Altagracia. Um, I would like to say that yes, for all of this, because you're right. What the Unco
Owen College.
Oncoli did, what the Oncoli did was bring back original copies of everybody. They did, of humans. They didn't go through and modify anything, including their mind. So they came back as originals, right? And so that meant that not only did they just come back with their bodies, they came back with their thinking, their brains, the whole thing, right? All of their pluses and minuses. And I would say with Lilith, once again, it's that whole idea of adapting. She adapted well to her situation, and at the same time did not leave the humans behind. And it was her hope to bring them along with her, because that was the thing. She was supposed to bring them along with her, but unfortunately she ran into that resistance. And so I would say, on the battlefield, yes, she was probably of two minds. The one mind was to, stay with the humans and with her people, and then on the other hand, help out Nakaj. And so she made a choice, and it was an act of bravery on her part, because she had, at least in her mind, the idea about, okay, she could see what the deal was. She understood it. And so by staying with Nakaj, she decided to, probably with her act of saying, I'm willing to do this, to make this sacrifice, because, and things stopped, and then, people were being healed and all that sort of thing. So yeah, So she was of two minds, and she chose to go in one direction, but to bring everybody with her. The desire.
All right, so here we are. It is 5:33, and I promised my daughter I would do an hour and a half. I have two questions before everyone can say their closing words. One question is, from a cadence standpoint, do we want to do this monthly, like do a book a month, bi-monthly, where we, come together every other month, or quarterly, where we come together every 3 months? And I'm fine with either one, but I just wanted to kind of get a cadence, and then we can kind of, get things scheduled so people can put it on their calendar.
I'd prefer monthly.
Yeah, I prefer monthly as well, and I have to go too. So
Okay, so
I
the
just
next
want to
question,
go
all right.
ahead. Go
So the
ahead.
next question is this. I had originally planned for us to continue reading the Xenogenesis series and then go into Clay's arc and then circle back to the parable of the sowers, simply because so many people are talking about the parable of the sowers. I thought it would be nice to look at other works, but there is a strong contingency of people who want to go back to the parable of the sowers because of the close alignment with what's happening now. So I would love to hear your preference. How many people want Parable of the Sowers to be the next book?
It doesn't
Okay.
matter to me. I'm open.
Okay. How many people want to continue finding out what's going to happen with Lilith and her brood?
Well, you got me wanting to reread, so I'd love to keep going on that one.
Yeah, whichever is fine with me.
So why don't we finish this series and then go to Parable of the Sowers?
Okay, so
Okay.
it's monthly. We're gonna do the Xenogenesis series, and I think when we have the next meeting, we'll touch on this one a little bit to kind of recap for the people who are coming in on the second book. And the other question is, an hour and a half enough time, or do we need to go to 2 hours?
Hour and a half.
I
Okay.
think hour and a half is good.
All right. Any objections? All right. Well, thank you all so very much. I did record this. Does anyone have any objections to me sharing this discussion to the group?
No,
Okay.
I
I
don't.
do have one other question. So are we going to meet what day? Are you going to just tell us what day we're meeting, or is it going to be a standard, weekday?
I think it would be good to do a standard. For me, on Sundays at 4 work well, just because I'm not, whatever I was gonna do, I'm done for the weekend, and I'm in wind down mode and get ready. But that's me.
I like Sunday afternoon. It works great.
Okay. So
Awesome.
all right. So whatever Sunday this is, we'll meet in 4 weeks.
All
Okay.
right then.
I think the next book is it
Adulthood rights or rights of adulthood.
Adulthood rights.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I always get mixed up if it's Adulthood Rights or Imago. But so the next book is Adulthood Rights, and we'll move forward. And it might be easier to read the Parable of the Sower when the LA is not on fire.
Yeah,
Oh
that
my
might be a
goodness.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm already so scared, and
Oh my goodness.
you just think about her journey up those freeways going up California, and oh my God.
I just have one thing I want to say before we leave, and that is Octavia Butler is so brilliant. The fact that she could have work that is literally on point
Mm-hmm.
in to the year. Who would imagine, right? 30 years ago that you could be on point with this. And I think that the messaging of her books are so powerful for us not to just look at it as, well, this is just fiction. No, it's not. It's about, let's be real about who we are and the things that we do and the behaviors that we have and what that produces. And for us, not necessarily not to be fearful about it, but to take lesson with it, right? The visionary of her 3 decades earlier to say, look, get your, whatever you want to call it together, because here's the reality of what this leads to or could lead to very realistically. And the fact that that's on point, that's not an accident, in my opinion. So, you know, and I take it seriously enough for us to decide to do better, decide to love better, to do better, and to create, you know, the utopia that we say that we're about, but we're not creating. But we really can, because here's someone who said, this is what happens when you don't.
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, ladies, until next time, I'll see you.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
Peace
you.
and
It was nice
blessings.
meeting everyone.
Nice meeting
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.